Welcome into Fantasy Football Night in America. This is FFPC Insider Access on the Better Sports Network. My name is Eric Balkman. You know me from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, and of course, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. You can connect with me on X at Eric Balkman as well. Hi, hello, and welcome. It is going to be a fun one tonight. It is late August. 2 weeks from today, the NFL season will begin with the Cowboys and Eagles kicking it off live from Philadelphia. Cannot wait. The only thing I could think of is jamming in as many fantasy football drafts as I can before that hits. And you can do the same with the Fantasy Football Players Championship. We have the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament going off, filling up a dozen plus drafts a day. Next week, that's going to turn into 2 dozen plus drafts a day. If you count slow drafts, it's going to be like 3 dozen plus drafts a day. Everybody's trying to get in to try to win this $1 million grand prize. Remember, you're going to get a $50 discount on every third team that you buy for that. And the 7 Bananas promo is live too. So even if you're not winning or drafting good teams, as long as you keep getting that 7 pick randomly multiple times in a row, you're going to get free teams. We have given away, I believe now 60 free FFPC Best Ball Tournament teams. We've given away 5 FFPC main event teams for those teams that have gotten the 7 pick twice and 3 times in a row, respectively. And if those people keep getting it, they're going to get a free High Society draft as well. And if you get it 5 times in a row, and that's a $10,000 entry. And if you get it 5 times in a row, we're going to give you a Jungle Safari for 4 or $50,000, whichever you'd prefer. That is at myffpc.com. Same place as you're going to find the FFPC main event. It is our flagship contest. Again, another $1 million grand prize in that tournament as well. A $6 million plus prize pool. We have draft slots available yet tonight if you want to draft. And of course, slow drafts going on as well. The FFPC Best Ball and Superflex Best Ball Tournament, $125 and $35 respectively to enter those. $300,000 and $100,000 grand prizes in those. And we added a $100,000 runner-up prize in the Best Ball Tournament this year as well. Drafts are available with 30-second, 60-second, 2-hour, and 6-hour clocks right now at myffpc.com. Dynasty startups going strong as well. myffpc.com. We've been doing Dynasty for a decade and a half. We have more than 2,000 Dynasty leagues on our website. None have ever folded. So if you're signing up for a Dynasty League with the FFPC, you know you're in it for as long as you want to be in it. Again, that's myffpc.com. And if I could bring you some bit of news here tonight, the 6-hour drafts, be it in the Big Gorilla, the Best Ball Tournament, the main event, the Superflex Best Ball Tournament, or Dynasty Leagues, we are anticipating the last day we're offering those 6-hour drafts will be tomorrow. That's going to be it. And then we're going to switch to 2 hours or live drafts. So if you like the 6 hours, 6 hour per pick, register your teams now at myffpc.com. Shout out to our producer, Sean Engel, filling in for Matt Deutsch tonight. I will bring in my guest co-host here shortly, but before we get to that, or before I bring him on, I do want to talk about what's going on around the NFL. I think we have a game tonight. I want to say it's the Steelers and Panthers. Yeah, that's going to kick off any minute here, I think. So we'll be following that action. And we'll also have Patriots Giants at the top of the hour as well for those of you who are looking to follow along with what's happening in the NFL. You can check that out now. Okay, let's get into what's going on around the NFL. We'll start off in Northeast Wisconsin here, where I'm at, talking about the Green Bay Packers. Matt LaFleur talked to the media today, talking about the Romeo Doubs trade rumors that are out there. And LaFleur said that's not going to happen. LaFleur went on to say that Doubs is out there competing. He's done everything that he needs to, or that the Packers need to see from him. Remember, last year, Doubs was suspended for a game. And we got the feeling that it was because he was upset with his role or upset that he wasn't, getting the ball enough or what have you. After that 1-game suspension, came back, caught 2 touchdowns, and seemed to me that all of his, the guys that congratulated him in the end zone first were his fellow wide receivers. So it sounds like this is a nothing burger, and he's not going to be moved. I think if you connect the dots, it's pretty easy to see that there are certain teams around the NFL that need receivers, and there are certain teams that are pretty rich with wide receivers. The Packers being one of them. It's part of the reason I have been staying away from Green Bay receivers this year, including Tucker Kraft, and I'll explain why. The Packers offense last year shifted to a much more robust running game, right? A power ground game. I think a lot of that had to do with Jordan Love and his knee injury. There wasn't a whole lot of fantasy goodness for wide receivers on a week-to-week basis. Yeah, best ball, you probably made it work with Jaden Reed, but that only lasted the first 2/3 of the season. And then he had that shoulder injury, kind of got shut down without being shut down after that, where the Packers just never really used him. Obviously, Christian Watson is a huge threat when he's out on the field, and teams have to respect that. The fantasy production was just not there. And then you think about Dontavian Wicks, had the opportunity to make a lot of big plays and get some spike weeks for best ball leagues, but he dropped a lot of passes last year too, which was really frustrating. You get Matthew Golden this year, you get Savion Williams, but all these other guys are back. Watson is probably going to be back at some point this season. And so now you have a situation where you have all this talent. The Packers are probably going to be passing a little bit more than they were last year, but maybe not all the way because they found something in Josh Jacobs. When you look at where you have to take some of these Green Bay Packers pass catchers in drafts, and I'll go with Fantasy Mojo's website, Darren Armani, the godfather of the FFPC Pros versus Joes competition, a guy that anytime we cite ADP, we are using his website, fantasymojo.com. Connect with them on X at Fantasy Mojo. And there's a ton of other tools on that when it comes to blind bidding for waivers, the stack counter, everything, or stack tracker, everything like that is available at fantasymojo.com. And what I want to cite here is these Packers ADP values for big gorilla drafts, right? So you have Matthew Golden, the first one off the board, wide receiver 39 at the 708. Jaden Reed goes quite a bit behind him. Obviously, he was in a walking boot until recently. He's going at the 9-11 right now. Am I reading that right? Yeah, 9-11. Romeo Doubs is a 16th round pick. Christian Watson, 18th. Dontavian Wicks, 18th. The value is fine for Watson and Wicks there, but when are you going to know when it's a Watson week? When are you going to know when it's a Wicks week? I'm fine with taking the chance on Matthew Golden, but now his price, because of his big preseason and training camp, he's ascended to a mid-7th round pick. I don't know if I want to mess around with that, considering that is a valuable pick, and I can get other receivers around him where I know what the role is on that team. Jaden Reed too is, I think you could make the same case with him as well. So, and Tucker Kraft, I could be completely wrong about. If he's the top 5 tight end this year, that should not surprise me, and it probably will. But for me, and talking about the Packers, this is what it's all about. It's fine for best ball, not messing around with these guys in managed leagues. I was messing around with Matthew Golden briefly, but his ADP is getting a little too out of control for me now in the 7th round. In fact, he went as high as the early 6th in an FFPC Big Gorilla draft yesterday. So that's something that we're following here with these Packers. And if you got a good handle on it, go with God. But I sure cannot figure it out, and I don't plan on trying to figure that out going forward here. Let's talk about Spencer Rattler. He is going to start the final preseason game of the season here for the Saints against the Broncos. The quarterbacks for New Orleans have had their moments against backups. Once they get to the starters, starting defenses, I don't think it's going to be all that great. Rattler actually started the second half last week, and I would imagine this might mean that Rattler is going to be the starter week 1, although I don't want to read too much into it. I think this is the take home with this. You don't want to be interested in Saints quarterbacks in Schuck and Rattler this year. What you should be interested in, what I'm interested in, Juwan Johnson, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. I'm talking about, and Alvin Kamara. I'm talking about taking all those guys, not on all the same team, but definitely at their prices in drafts. The New Orleans offense last year was about as bad as one could imagine. And, I don't know how much worse it's going to be this year, but you're going to have Chris Olave to start off the season. I still think Alvin Kamara, there's something there. In regards to Rashid Shaheed, this is a player that I just drafted him again in a KFFSC draft today. I just can't get enough of this guy, and he's going super late in drafts. If you look at the mojo on Rashid Shaheed right now, a player who has been working in the slot in training camp and in games as well, which is only going to add to his target volume this year. Shaheed is wide receiver 54 at the 1107. And Chris Olave, yeah, he's a mid-7th round pick. But I think that the thing to understand with the Saints is both of these guys, Olave and Shaheed, are going to do numbers this year. I'm big fans of Olave and Shaheed, and Kamara is another running back too that I'm drafting as my number 2 in a lot of drafts. I think if you go robust running back, you might even be able to get him as your 3rd running back, although that might be getting a little bit aggressive depending upon how your draft is going. Look, New Orleans is going to be passing a lot. They might be involved in some shootouts in that division with Tampa, Atlanta, and Carolina. You don't necessarily, like talent is not everything, and elite offenses are not everything. Sometimes you just put up stats because you're forced to put up stats, and that could be the case with New Orleans this year. Olave's got talent. Shaheed's got talent. A lot of people were telling you to take Shaheed last year. I wasn't one of them, but I definitely am this year. I was on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Draft Marathon with Jim Coventry earlier this week, and we were all assigned a team. Well, we got to pick a team, and I picked the Saints just because I saw some value there that I think was being underappreciated by FFPC drafters. And I think you need to take a closer look when you're on the clock in the mid-7th, when you're on the clock in the mid-11th, quite frankly, when you're on the clock in the early 4th. Kamara, Olave, Shaheed, these are all guys. Juwan Johnson late too at the 1904 in FFPC big gorilla drafts. It's crazy. And you could get him as your 3rd tight end. So I love that. I'm a big fan of that as well. Some Chargers news here, and I want to lead things off. This will be my Omari and Hampton story. Daniel Popper, who covers the Los Angeles Chargers, cited Jim Harbaugh not talking about Najee Harris, whether he's going to begin the regular season on the NFI list or not. He was asked about specifically by the media, and I don't know if it's Daniel Popper himself who asked it, but he was asked about, hey, are you going to put Najee Harris on the NFI list? And Harbaugh said, quote, when Najee is ready to play, Najee will be ready to play. And then speculation about whether he's going on this list or not beyond today goes over the legal limit of what ifs. God bless Jim Harbaugh, a master wordsmith here. Here's the takeaway, the TLDR. This isn't good for Harris, and you shouldn't feel great about drafting Najee Harris right now. The thing is with this Chargers running back situation, to me, it's all about Omari and Hampton. If I'll say this, when you were drafting Omari and Hampton after the NFL draft, you knew he was going to be sharing the backfield with Najee Harris, right? Jim Harbaugh has already said that he's going to be sharing the backfield with somebody. He was always going to be in a rotation. That rotation is going to be Omari and Hampton, Kamani Vidal, Raheem Sanders. None of these guys should scare you off of Omari and Hampton, who could be in for a big baller year. I understand the Rashawn Slater injury. That was not great. In fact, there's some people that are saying that this is really going to destroy the offensive line and the Chargers offense in general. I'm not one of those people. I'm still team Omari and Hampton. He has ascended right now in drafts, in FFPC big gorilla drafts. Over the last 2 days, you're looking at Najee Harris as running back 54, Omari and Hampton running back 13 at the 304. John Daigle from Establish the Run in his Pros versus Joes draft, after the news came out about Harris, where he couldn't open his eye, he was wearing a weighted vest and walking around. John Daigle in his Pros versus Joes draft took him at the end of the 2nd round, like at the 210. And we thought that was crazy. And now it's just like he was just being aggressive because it could be wheels up for Hampton this year with or without Slater. He's going to get volume. He's going to do numbers. He's going to catch passes. He's going to do it all. Najee Harris, to me, I don't know how late he'd have to go for me to consider him at this point. In fact, I'm kind of regretting drafting him after the fireworks incident. I didn't think it was going to be this bad. He has fallen to the 13th round, and I still don't know if he's worth taking in the 13th round. This could be something that dogs him all year. So this is something that we will be following over the next 2 weeks. But FFPC drafters are certainly not pushing him up boards right now. And I don't know what the ceiling is. I don't know what the upside is of taking him in the 13th round either. There's some contingent upside, I guess, if Hampton were to go down, but Harris is still probably going to be sharing the backfield with these other guys and rotating them in. Sticking with the Chargers here, let's talk about the receivers. Trey Harris, Quentin Johnston are both in the news. Trey Harris is not going to be playing tonight. He left yesterday's practice early due to tightness. Jim Harbaugh did not speak to to this much. Here's why I don't think it necessarily matters. Because of the signing of Keenan Allen, because of the big-time play of Keandre Lambert-Smith, I think that you have to start looking at Trey Harris as just kind of having a lost year in 2025. He's been outplayed by a rookie that was drafted after him. The Chargers went out and got their old familiar slot guy in Keenan Allen, who's actually been playing on the outside now for the Chargers. So Trey Harris is fine for Dynasty. I drafted him in a couple of spots. I'm not cutting him. I'm going to keep him there, obviously. But for redraft purposes, I think you just let him go. I don't really see the upside here with Trey Harris, not to mention Quentin Johnston, who we were worried about this injury that he had. He had a neck injury. I believe it was late last week. I don't think it was early this week. And he came back to practice. Quentin Johnston, as much as he's been kind of a punchline over the course of his rookie year in the NFL, he took some strides last year, and he's been showing out in camp this year. We just kind of always assumed that these first-round receivers are ready to go, but there were people out there telling you, and I, quite frankly, was probably one of them, maybe not as loud as some other people, that it might be, Quentin Johnston might need some extra seasoning to try to get going here in the NFL. And it did not surprise me at all that he let us down his rookie year. It also didn't surprise me at all that he took a step forward. This is sort of like the path of a lot of rookie receivers, whether you're drafted in the first round or not. So Quentin Johnston, I'm actually in on a little bit this year. I think when you look at the values of these players, as far as the receivers go, Trey Harris, I'm not taking him in the 14th. Quentin Johnston in the 18th, I could see a path there in a managed league where he might make some sense. Keandre Lambert-Smith, okay, maybe still because he's the rookie, he's the unknown, it's an 18th round pick, whatever. I guess I can get on board with that. But definitely in on Keenan Allen. He's still a double-digit round player. He's probably going to catch 80 balls this year for 700 some yards and half dozen touchdowns, and there's value in that in managed leagues. And obviously, Ladd McConkey is a guy that I never really dropped in my rankings at all. He's a guy that was going in the late second round for the most part. And then after Allen, he slipped a little bit over the last 2 days in the big gorilla tournament. McConkey has gone as late as the 307, but he's also gone as high as the 206. So that's like a full round there where he's kind of going all over the place there. But he's a guy I don't doubt this season. He's a player that I definitely want to be in business with going forward. Death, taxes, and T. Higgins injuries, right? Well, we had another one earlier this afternoon. T. Higgins resumed practice today after he had his left ankle examined by Bengals trainers. Now, it looks like he's going to be fine, and I would think that there's, the fact that he resumed practicing, I would think that there's nothing here. But if you look at what T. Higgins has undergone, what he suffered through the course of his career, his lower body is not exactly made of iron, right? He's had some problems there. Higgins, but here's the thing. This is what you're doing when you're getting into business with T. Higgins. When you want to draft him, and right now he is going as wide receiver 13 at the 306. If you want to take him as a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1, you have to understand that with this elite offense, with this bad defense, with all the numbers, the yards, the scores that Cincinnati is going to put up this year, you have to understand at the same time there is a bit of an injury risk, and you have to be prepared for that. Now, if before the week starts that he's hurt and you can put somebody in, hey, great. The thing I always worry about with drafting these guys, starting them when they're healthy, and then they get dinged up in the first quarter or the first half, and you end up getting very little from them that game. I don't draft scared. When I'm thinking about drafting T. Higgins, I understand the injury aspect of it, but it doesn't play that much in my mind. If I'm trying to win a big national tournament, like if you're trying to win the FFPC main event or the FFPC Big Gorilla, I don't think you shouldn't be drafting with that fear in your head with T. Higgins. Recognize the upside. Recognize what he can do when he's right. I can't remember who said this. It was referring to Christian McCaffrey. I want to say it was Ben Gretsch. I think I've referenced this on the show before. Ben Gretsch from Stealing Signals. Sometimes we ask ourselves the question about drafting these guys high. And I think he was referencing McCaffrey. Well, what happens if he gets hurt? Then what does my team look like? What happens if this guy goes down? Then how am I going to cobble together a lineup? What happens if this guy can't play for me? How am I going to win games and put up points? And Ben said, well, maybe the question we should be asking ourselves, What happens if he doesn't get hurt? What happens if he stays healthy? What happens if we get 17 games from T. Higgins? What happens if we get 17 games from Christian McCaffrey? It's these types of things. And we got that answer with Saquon Barkley last year with the Eagles, right? Well, but I'm worried, he's had some lower body stuff and over the course of his career, he's missed significant time. Well, he stayed healthy for 17 games, put up 2,000 yards, had a legit shot at winning the MVP in any other year, except for the years that Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson had. So the question was answered last year. What happens if Saquon Barkley doesn't get hurt? You're probably winning a lot of fantasy leagues. This is a guy that was going in the early second round and finished as the best running back in football. Something to keep in mind. I think sometimes we often think about the bad so much, and we don't necessarily think about the positive. We don't necessarily think about the good. All right. I want to move on here and go to Southern California. We may or may not touch on this later on in the show. I don't think we will, actually. So this is good that we could break this down now. Matt Stafford is practicing in full this week. This according to his head coach, Sean McVay. Remember, he had that back injury that prevented him from starting training camp, was unhealthy or not healthy enough to play. And McVay said he feels, quote unquote, good about his current participation level. And obviously you want him to not suffer any setbacks, not needing any extra days off. And the reason I bring this up is not necessarily, hey, should I be drafting Matthew Stafford this year? The reason I bring it up is what it does to Kyren Williams and then specifically Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua. I have been, with the exception of just drafting Devontae Adams in one draft about 3 days ago, 2 or 3 days ago, I can't remember. I haven't really drafted a whole lot. I think I have Nacua in one draft so far. I don't think I have Kyren Williams anywhere. Matthew Stafford has never been the guy that is the fantasy beneficiary of having two great targets. He had Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua for the last couple of years, and those guys were great when they were out there. But at the same time, Matthew Stafford wasn't putting up big numbers. So this isn't a question of Matthew Stafford. This, for me, is a question of the likelihood that Stafford is out there for 14, 15, 16 games this season, throwing in Nacua and Adams. The thing that you have to understand is Jimmy Garoppolo is the backup. And the backup plan to Jimmy Garoppolo may or may not be a trade with the Atlanta Falcons to get Kirk Cousins on board. Those are two not great plans. Now, I think Garoppolo is going to be okay enough to keep Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua from losing you weeks in fantasy. But at the same time, I don't know if he's going to be able to get the best out of these guys so that they're helping you win. And they need to help you win and not just help you not lose, because Nacua is a first-round pick. Devontae Adams is a third-round pick. These guys need to be difference makers for you. That's the Stafford side of it. Who, by the way, and I'll bring this up too. They had the big RV or whatever it was called. I don't remember the name of it. But the thing that he was going into for treatment, I guess this is something that the Rams pay for their players to go in. There's some red light therapy. There's all these different things. And like I said, it's a big, I can't remember what it was called, but it's like this big giant tube, this big RV trailer sized thing. And Stafford used it, but so did a lot of the other Los Angeles Rams. And I don't even think he got his back worked on in there. He just got some other stuff like that. So I think that was a little bit overblown. But dude is 37 years old. Stafford is not being taken down in practice right now. He is not being hit in practice. And he's practicing every day this week, which is great. So what happens when he takes that first big sack of the season? How does he get up from that? What happens when he's got to bounce back from a Monday night game and then playing on Sunday the following week? Or what happens if he plays on Sunday and then he's got to go on Thursday? The wear and tear of the body of Matthew Stafford over the course of 15 years in this league is significant, and it could get even more significant this year. And like I said, it's Garoppolo and maybe Stetson Bennett or Kirk Cousins. I don't know, but it's not a great solution. And then you look at the wide receivers themselves. Puka Nacua, a guy who we love watching. We are a huge fan. We are huge fans of watching Puka Nacua play football. He's fantastic. He's just always going all out every single play, no plays off. Here's the problem with that. Human body isn't meant to do that from the wide receiver position. Guy needs to take care of his body, and he does not. He does not care about what happens to his body. He doesn't land right. He's always going the extra mile, and that has cost him games before, and it's probably going to cost him games again this year. So I worry. I love the reckless abandon from a selfish fan standpoint. I don't like it from a selfish fantasy standpoint because I don't know if that's what you want for your fantasy players. Devontae Adams too. He's probably going to be okay. I feel better about his draft capital and investing in him. I like the investment of Devontae Adams at cost better than I like the investment of Puka Nacua at cost. I'm a big fan of Adams over the course of his career. What he's been able to do, he's a Hall of Famer, a future Hall of Famer. He's fantastic. But he is getting up there in age. And I think if you look at certain metrics, you have to kind of pick and choose. But there were certain things that we saw last year. And maybe he is slowing down a little bit. And he's not a spring chicken anymore. So that's the other thing. I think I recognize the upside with the Rams. And you don't want to draft scared. So if you are a believer in those guys, hey, you get the bulky stamp of approval on that. For me and my teams, I'm probably going to go a different direction on a lot of those guys as it stands right now for where these guys are going in drafts. Right now, Puka Nacua, wide receiver 7 at the 203. I mean, give me Brian Thomas there instead of Nacua there. Drake London goes after him. Drake London could lead the league in targets this year. I'd rather have him than Nacua. Then you get into A.J. Brown, Ladd McConkey, and then it's a little bit dicey then. But these guys are going a full round after Nacua. And by the way, if you don't like Nacua, it's not like you have to take a wide receiver there. Derrick Henry is going after him. Devon Achane, depending upon how you feel about him, he's going after him. Chase Brown, Bucky Irving, Jonathan Taylor, the list goes on. There's plenty of people that will tell you that all those guys are better choices than Nacua. And I might be one of them for the Rams right now. In general. And then, getting back to Devontae Adams right now, he's wide receiver 18. I think you can make a strong case that Tetairoa McMillan's a better choice than him. Xavier Worthy, Cortland Sutton. I think I'd rather have let me think about this. I'd rather have McMillan than him for sure. I'd rather have Marvin Harris. Yeah, I'd rather have Marvin Harrison than him. Xavier Worthy, I'd rather have than him. And then it gets a little bit, I'd probably split it down the middle between Adams and Cortland Sutton. That's just a feel thing for me at that point. Some leagues I might take Sutton, some leagues I might take Adams, but all those guys are going after him in ADP right now. So something to be monitoring. Breece Hall is also going after Devontae Adams, but I think I'd rather have Adams there. We may or may not get into the Jets running game later on in the show. Let's talk about let's see, what do I want to go to next here? I think I will go to Travis Hunter because this is of all the players that I have drafted so far this year, and I'm in probably, I don't know, maybe 10 to 15 best ball leagues and 20 to 25 managed leagues, somewhere around there as it stands right now. I think that, and I'm more of a managed league guy. Best ball's fun, but I like to be able to mold my clay, so to speak, throughout the season. So I'm definitely in more managed leagues. Travis Hunter's on a lot of them. And I'm not panicking yet. And I don't think anybody should be panicking. But Travis Hunter did not practice today. He's got an upper body injury. Don't know what that means. And he's not going to be playing not only he missed the joint practice today with the Dolphins, and he's not going to be playing in the Saturday game against Miami as well. Apparently, Liam Cohen considered allowing Hunter to play today. This is Thursday. But he wanted to avoid any chance of re-aggravation of the injury. So no setbacks have been reported. If it was a game today, Cohen said that Hunter probably would have played. None of the starters are actually playing for the Jaguars against the Dolphins. So that's good. It doesn't make me feel great, but at the same time, part of the reason I love drafting Travis Hunter so much this season is he's a unicorn. He is a true unknown. We talk about drafting unknowns as far as rookies go. Like, we just don't know how they're going to perform at the NFL level. Justin Jefferson was far from the first wide receiver drafted in the year he was picked in the NFL, and then went on to have an absolute baller season, and he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory right now. So we just don't know. And then, John Ross, a former top 10 pick, Corey Davis, a former top 5 pick. We thought those guys are going to be great. They weren't in the pros. So you just never know. And yeah, when you draft players like this, some of them are going to bust. But sometimes you have to live dangerously. And I don't think there's a whole lot of danger in Hunter. I think this guy is a freak. I think what he was able to do at the collegiate level blew my mind and a lot of other people's minds. It was absolutely crazy town banana pants that this guy was playing, nearly every single snap, offense and defense, for an FBS program. It was just crazy. Wins the Fred Biletnikoff trophy for the best wide receiver, wins the Heisman trophy for the best player. And now he's wide receiver 31 at the 605. I get that Brian Thomas is going to command a lot of targets, but Jaguars paid a lot of draft capital to move up to select Hunter. And, we're talking about, I think Liam Cohen said that 80% of his practices were going to be spent on offense. I don't know if that means 80% of the snaps he's going to play. That'd be a really high rate, especially if he's playing defense. So I'd definitely be down on that, or down for that, I should say. The thing with Hunter is, though, I don't know what this guy is capable of, and not in equal parts, but that scares me. And it also excites me of having this guy in my team as my third wide receiver, or if I go heavy wide receiver early on, have him like my fourth wide receiver. Travis Hunter is your 4. There's a non-zero chance that this guy is a top 15 guy this year. And I know you have to be bullish on Liam Cohen. You have to be bullish on Trevor Lawrence. And that hasn't really worked out in the past, being bullish on Trevor Lawrence. But at the same time, you have to recognize the upside. And there's a ton of it with Travis Hunter. As long as he stays in the mid-6th round, FFPC drafters, I think he's a player that you need to seriously look at. Who's more exciting there? Travis Hunter or Jerry Jeudy? Travis Hunter or Zay Flowers? Travis Hunter or Rashee Rice, who could be facing a suspension of, nearly half the season. It's Travis Hunter for me. Now, you want to get into Emeka Egbuka, you want to get into Ricky Pearsall. Okay, I get why there's excitement there, and maybe you'd rather have Pearsall, who's probably going to go into the season as the unquestioned number 1 wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. I get why you'd take Pearsall over Hunter. I get why you'd take Egbuka for Tampa, coming off the season that Tampa did last year, and now, they're running out of warm bodies in Central Florida right now. So Egbuka could be the featured guy on a lot of passing routes. We've heard nothing but good things about Egbuka so far this season. So I think that's so far this preseason. So I think that's a fine pick if you want to take him over Hunter. I still would rather have Hunter over Egbuka, but I will admit that it is getting closer to me pulling the trigger with Egbuka over Travis Hunter Jr. Egbuka over Travis Hunter. Okay. The scare for Lamar Jackson seems to be just that, a scare, and nothing else. He had x-rays on his foot that came back earlier this afternoon. Lamar Jackson's foot has no damage, according to those x-rays. The foot, after being stepped on in practice yesterday, is a little sore, but he's fine. He didn't practice today, and it sounds like he's going to be fine. So anybody who was worried about Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, if you were saying, oh, I don't know about Jackson's foot, I'm going to take Josh Allen instead. That's fine if you still want to do that. But I think I hesitate to use the word nothing burger. But I do think ultimately this is just a blip on the radar. The leagues I have Lamar Jackson in, I feel good. Leagues that I have not drafted yet, I'd feel fine taking him as the first quarterback off the board. Isaiah Bond. This is interesting. So Mary Kay Cabot from the Cleveland Plain Dealer, I think she's still with the CPD. I could be wrong about that. Is reporting that Isaiah Bond is going to be playing in the 3rd preseason game against the Los Angeles Rams. He has practiced 3 times, and already we're finding out that this dude is playing in a real-life NFL preseason game for Cleveland. I can't believe he is anywhere close to mastering the offense. I can't believe there's any kind of chemistry going on with Isaiah Bond and presumed week 1 starter Joe Flacco. Well, not presumed. It was announced that he's going to be the starter for week 1. I'm not going to get down with Isaiah Bond in redraft leagues. Dynasty, okay, see what can happen. But this is a guy who's going to be coming off on a slow start, not only because he's a rookie, but because he missed all this time. So I think you can look elsewhere and focus in on Jerry Jeudy and Harold Fannin and David Njoku, Cedric Tillman, for God's sake, over Isaiah Bond. I would rather have Bond than Deontay Johnson for what it's worth, but that's the whole mystery box thing that I would tell you that you need to be paying attention to. Deontay Johnson is, I wouldn't say probably not making the team, but it's like a 50-50 shot at this point. Dan Quinn. We'll get into more Commanders talk later on, but I do want to mention this. John Keim reporting this, that the Commanders head coach Dan Quinn says he, quote, sees the ascension taking place with Jaylen Lane. I know there were a lot of pundits out there that were on Jaylen Lane after the NFL draft when he landed, with the Commanders. He was a 4th-round pick this year, early day 3 pick. And apparently he is responding very well to the coaching he's getting there. And at some point could be the number 3 receiver, or maybe higher if Terry McLaurin doesn't get into camp. At this point, you got to stash him in Dynasty just to see what happens. You want to take him at in best ball drafts, 28-round best ball drafts. I can get down with that. Still think he's a borderline redraft pick right now. Noah Brown right now is hurt. I shouldn't say hurt. He's close to returning. We don't know exactly what's going on with him, but we will find out here shortly. Here's another thing that I think is important to understand. Diana Rossini brought this up for The Athletic. We have cutdown day coming up in the NFL. We're honestly going to be paying very close attention to what players make the team and what players don't make the team. Maybe not so much at receiver and tight end and quarterback, but definitely at running back, because this is where things can change quite a bit with one signing. The Saints, the Browns, and the Chiefs are among the teams making calls trying to acquire rushers. The Browns, we don't know what's going on with Quinshon Judkins. He's no higher than a 10th round pick for me, so I'm probably not going to get him in a lot of spots. I just don't know what's going to happen with him. Maybe he doesn't sign a deal at all, and him and the Browns can't come to any kind of agreement. I think that you have to understand that he's a rookie, and it was always going to be, it was never going to be a fast learning curve with him either. So when you have a situation with Quinshon Judkins coming into a backfield that already has Jerome Ford, that already has Dylan Sampson, this is not ideal for him to all of a sudden take the reins after he missed all this time and become a low-end running back too. So I think I'm out on him. Rossini is saying that the Saints, the Browns, and the Chiefs are among the teams trying to acquire running backs here. The Chiefs have Pacheco. The Saints have Kamara, but really nothing behind them. I know the Chiefs have a ton of bodies behind Pacheco, but I don't know if any of those guys are a dude. Maybe Brashard Smith, maybe not. Devin Neal, to me, was more. I don't think he's all that athletically talented. Maybe he's a good football player. He missed 2 weeks of camp as well. And he's fighting for the backup role with Kendra Miller. Here's what I want you to understand, and this goes for any of you drafting Javonte Williams, drafting Jaden Blue, drafting Miles Sanders in Dallas, and there's some other running back situations that we could make mention of this. Just because a player makes a team doesn't necessarily mean that his standing on the depth chart is safe after cutdown day. Brian Robinson, in my estimation, probably not going to be on the Commanders for week 1 of the season. And I think that might be a safe bet right now. And if that is the case, where's he going to go? Is he going to go to Kansas City to disrupt things with Pacheco, with Brashard Smith, Elijah Mitchell, all those other guys there? Is he going to go to New Orleans to maybe be a between the tackles banger, to go with Alvin Kamara being sort of a very experienced and very, a rich man satellite back? It's a possibility as well. The Cowboys, all of a sudden that makes at least 2 of those guys not draftable, right? If Brian Robinson goes to Dallas. So I think we have to understand, you draft in the moment, you draft for today, understanding that you have to have caveats with a lot of these running backs. If you wait, you go 0 RB, hey, that's cool. But you better go heavy on these players in the middle of drafts, because their value, their role is a lot more volatile than somebody you'd see in the first few rounds. You don't need to watch this show for me to understand that point. You already know that point. I'm just bringing it up once again here, that these backfields are still going to be fluid even after the preseason ends, even after cut down day comes. So something to keep in mind as well. We did, and I'll go back to Tampa here. I know I was talking about Ibuka earlier. We got some pretty good news, in my opinion, from Greg Auman, who covers the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Todd Bowles told the media today that Tristan Wirfs, despite his knee injury, he's going to open the season on the 53-man roster. Now, that doesn't necessarily, similar to what they're saying about Chris Godwin too, doesn't necessarily mean they're playing in September. In fact, I think it's a virtual guarantee that while Wirfs and Godwin are going to be on the 53-man, I don't think that they're going to play week 1. I think Godwin is still not going to play until October. But they're leaving these guys on the roster so they can practice with the team if they are ready. And is week 4 unrealistic? I don't think so. Week 3, maybe unrealistic. The Tristan Wirfs thing, I think, is so important because, and Evan Silva's been driving this thing home all offseason, ever since Wirfs got that knee injury. You don't have a super talented swing tackle on Tampa to come in. So Baker Mayfield has just as much time as he did last year to find Evans and Godwin down the field. Kate Otten too. You have like probably below level replacement or replacement level at best tackle coming in there. And that can really change your offense. We already thought, or at least I did, thought that there's going to be some significant regression coming for the Buccaneers offense this year. And I'm not backing off that. I think it will happen. But the earlier they can get Wirfs in there, the better. And as soon as he comes in and makes his appearance, I'm going to feel much more warm and fuzzy about that entire Buccaneers offense, Bucky Irving included, than when he was not in there. Wirfs makes a big difference in that Tampa offensive line. Let's go to Houston. DJ Bieniemy, who covers the Texans for ESPN, has reported that rookie Jaden Higgins, the first second-round NFL draft pick, I believe, in league history to get a fully guaranteed deal, is rotating with Xavier Hutchinson on the outside when the Texans go to 3 wide receiver sets. So, for any of you who thought that, hey, this is going to be great, this is a tailor-made situation for Jaden Higgins to be the wide receiver opposite Nico Collins, I think I'm going to have to borrow a line from Steve Harvey and say, slow your role player on that. Higgins was the starter on the depth chart for a good portion of training camp. I don't know if it was all of training camp, but apparently Xavier Hutchinson has made enough plays and done enough that he is going to be forcing a timeshare, at least early on in the season. Listen, Hutchinson is no threat to Higgins long-term. At least I don't think so in Houston. So I think more often than not, you're going to see Higgins out there. However, it's important to understand that we can't just take for granted that Higgins is going to be out there a bunch. The guy I think that I'm more intrigued with over the last 2 weeks in drafts in Houston than I was earlier is probably Christian Kirk, a guy who's going to be cut by the Jaguars till the Texans reached out with a 7th-round pick to acquire his services, and he'll probably be playing in the slot. I think Collins and Kirk are going to catch a boatload of passes this year. I know Collins is, and Kirk probably will too. I think Higgins and Jalen Noel, they're going to be worked in, and obviously Xavier Hutchinson as well. This is a situation where it's rookie receivers, non-first-round rookie receivers, and it takes a little bit. And I think we're seeing that right now as we get closer and closer to the season, 2 weeks away from the season. You can't count on Higgins as a wide receiver 4 right now. And certainly, if I'm drafting him, I would be prepared not to start him at all until the bye weeks start coming in, and then I'm forced to play Higgins. So that's the situation in Houston right now. Again, I'm really bullish on Christian Kirk, and now letting Jaden Higgins slip down my board a little bit. I'll tell you right now, as far as their ADP, according to Fantasy Mojo, Jaden Higgins has dropped to wide receiver 51. He is at the 10-11 turn right now. And guess who's at wide receiver 53? Just beyond that 10-11 turn, one Christian Kirk. I do expect with this news coming out earlier this afternoon in Big Gorilla Drafts today, Big Gorilla Drafts main event drafts going on in the FFPC over the weekend, I do expect those guys to flip, and Kirk will soon be going ahead of Jaden Higgins going forward. Speaking of wide receivers, let's go to Minnesota. Kevin Seifert, who covers, I believe, the NFC North for ESPN.com, former Vikings reporter. I don't think he covers just the Vikings. I think he covers the whole division. Don't quote me on that. Jordan Addison and rookie out of Maryland, Ty Felton, are going to have no issues going forward after they both had arm injuries in practice yesterday. It could have been an arm injury, could have been a hand injury. Seifert didn't know. Nobody, when they left practice, they never came back to it. The Vikings avoid a significant injury, it appears, with Jordan Addison, but remember, he's still missing the first 3 games of the season. Jalen Naylor is currently week to week with a hand injury, and certainly if Felton, the more he can get out there, the better off he's going to be when it comes to getting fantasy value early on in the season when Addison is out. Justin Jefferson is going to get a ton of targets over the first 3 weeks, and then Addison will come in. Here's why I'm not fading Addison, and I think that you've heard this from a lot of people. That makes perfect sense. He's wide receiver 42 at the 806. Now, he has slipped a little bit since the suspension, but at the same time, I always thought where he was going in drafts, people were just presuming that he was going to be suspended. Jordan Addison is not the 42nd best receiver you want to have this year. He should be going higher than that. He should be going higher than guys like Deebo Samuel. I'd much rather have Addison over Samuel. You can make the case that Addison is a better acquisition than Jakobi Meyers. And some of these other running backs are going ahead of him. I know there's a lot of Jordan Mason love out there, but I think you can make the case that Addison's better. Now we're getting into team construction of who's better for your team. Certain cases it'd be Addison, certain cases it would be Mason. But Jordan Addison, I think Scott Barrett from Fantasy Points pointed out that he is like something ungodly over his first 2 seasons in the league, or 3. I can't remember how many seasons he's played now, but he's like top 12 in those 3 seasons in end zone targets, not red zone targets, end zone targets. This guy has a nose for the end zone, and he's scoring. It's not like he's dropping these passes or they're landing incomplete. He's scoring a bunch. I know touchdowns are usually not a sticky stat, but we've had 3 years of sample with Jordan Addison, and it certainly seems that he is finding himself open in the end zone, and his quarterbacks are taking advantage of it. So I'm in on Jordan Addison. I continue to be in on him, even with the suspension. The first 3 weeks of the year are probably the easiest weeks to find replacements on your bench for injured guys or suspended guys, right? I mean, nobody's on bye. Everybody is coming into the season. I shouldn't say everybody. Most people are coming into the season healthy. So you shouldn't have to worry about anything like that. I think, and this goes back to the whole JJ McCarthy thing. Like, if you're a believer in McCarthy, then yeah, you're going to be in on Jefferson. You're going to be in on Hawkinson. You're going to be in Addison, Mason, Aaron Jones, all these guys. And I am a believer in JJ McCarthy. I think this guy is going to have several top 12 weeks this year. I've been drafting him probably not enough. It was weird because back in March, April, and then May, I guess, when we didn't know what was going on with Aaron Rodgers, and we didn't know if I think he wanted to go to Minnesota, but I don't think Minnesota wanted him. But we didn't know that as fantasy drafters. Like, we still had to allow for the possibility that Rodgers could still be going there. So McCarthy was like quarterback 29, quarterback 30, 31, sometimes not even a top 32 quarterback in best ball drafts, right? And then he slowly made his way up. And then when Rodgers went to the Steelers, he really solidified himself. And there's a lot of excitement going on with JJ McCarthy. He went up to, quarterback 13, quarterback 14, which I think was too high. Now he's settled in as like quarterback 17, quarterback 18. That's a good price for McCarthy there, and I'd gladly pay that for sure. We talked about Pearsall earlier, joining him on that in that San Francisco 49ers receiver room. Sky Moore has been traded from the Kansas City Chiefs to the San Francisco 49ers. 6th and 7th round picks in 2027 are swapped. Remember, between the Niners and Chiefs, excuse me. He was a 2nd round pick in 2022 and never really developed in Kansas City. 43 catches, 494 yards, and a touchdown over his first 2 seasons. He had 3 targets last season. Did not capture a catch on any of them. He is a returner. This past week, he almost returned a punt for a touchdown. And the 49ers are really beat up at receiver as well. With Juwan Jennings' calf, you have Brandon Ayuk coming off the ACL. You're looking at Demarcus Robinson being suspended. Jacob Cowing, I think, was hurt, but I think he's back now. And you never know with DJ Moore. For me, best ball, but he's not going to be a redraft player for me at all. Let's go to our nation's capital here. I've avoided it as long as we could. We cannot avoid it anymore. Terry McLaurin. Reportedly, according to The Athletic's Nikki Javala, he asked for more money than DK Metcalf got with Pittsburgh. As a reminder, Metcalf, 4 years, $132 million on the extension, but he's younger than McLaurin, and the Steelers actually gave up a second-round pick for the right to sign Metcalf to that deal. The contract that I think the Commanders are trying to shift the focus to for Terry McLaurin and his management team is Courtland Sutton's. 4 years, $92 million. That is $33 million for Metcalf per year. That is $23 million for Sutton per year. Now, I would imagine that McLaurin he understands that he's going to be getting something between these two, and I think the Commanders understand that as well. But he wants more of the Metcalf side. I'm sure the Commanders want to pay him more the Sutton side. This has dragged on quite a while. And I know that he's healthy, and I know that he has one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL throwing to him. I know he goes back to a team that went to the NFC Championship game last year. But this is a guy, throw all the contract stuff out. I just imagine that there's going to be negative regression coming for him anyway this season with all the touchdowns he caught last year. The touchdown rate was obscenely high. And it's not like this guy is, 24, 25 years old coming into his prime. He's 30 years old. This is a guy, you could make the argument his best football might be behind him. Now, he does, when he comes back, he will join a team that features Deebo Samuel, Jalen Lane, Noah Brown, Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler, Jacory Croskey-Merritt. These are the other pass catchers. So, yeah, I get it that he's stepping into a good situation. But, man, the age, the touchdown regression, and the fact that he's missed basically all of camp, these are all reasons not to draft Terry McLaurin, who has fallen in drafts to wide receiver 24 at the 503. Some of the wide receivers going after him that I'd rather have. George Pickens, I'd rather have than Terry McLaurin. Calvin Ridley, I'd rather have than Terry McLaurin. Jamison Williams, I'd rather have over Terry McLaurin. Devonta Smith, I'd rather have over McLaurin. And quite frankly, this may sound crazy. Maybe it's not crazy. Maybe you agree. I think I'd rather have Egbuka over Terry McLaurin, the way it's going right now. You get into that Egbuka, Travis Hunter, Jalen Waddle, Ricky Pearsall area, I think you really have to look long and hard before you push the click button on Terry McLaurin this year. These red flags have been around for a while, and he's only added more red flags throughout the season. So I'm definitely down on F1, and I'm letting somebody else draft McLaurin this year. Egbuka, I mentioned. I'll just bring this up briefly because I kind of talked about it already. Rick Stroud for the Tampa Bay Times said that Jalen McMillan is going to go on injured reserve. He could be out past the week 9 bye for Tampa this year. And consider this. The comment from Todd Bowles regarding Jalen McMillan was, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I'm getting the gist of it. Bowles did not think it was career threatening. This is a neck injury. It's dangerous. I just read a fantastic story on ESPN.com today about 2 high school players 50 years apart who ended up dying from neck injuries that they suffered on the football field. It was incredibly, it's making me rethink letting my son play football, quite frankly. Neck injuries in football are nothing to mess around with. So Jalen McMillan, you're not drafting him anywhere. You're not drafting him in best ball. You're not drafting him in redraft. Chris Godwin, maybe he's back by week 4, but I wonder what version of Chris Godwin we're going to see. And Emeka Egbuka, if it wasn't for Croskey-Merritt, there would be no bigger, stronger, faster hype train for any rookie this season than Emeka Egbuka. We heard from the get-go that this guy was polished. This is before he got drafted by Tampa. This guy was polished. He was NFL ready. He is the all-time leading receiver in Ohio State history. Think about that. So he goes to Tampa, who, we don't know how much longer Mike Evans is going to be there. Mike Evans almost alluding to maybe this is going to be his last year. Chris Godwin, we don't know if he's ever going to be the same after that devastating ankle injury. That happened in week 7 last year. And he had to have another surgery on it this offseason, and he's still not practicing. This is wheels up for Egbuka. Baker Mayfield opened a press conference about a month or so ago. Unprompted, just started talking about how great it's been having Emeka Egbuka, how awesome he is, what a great pro he's going to be. Nobody asked him. He just started talking about him. And when that's this is stuff we have to be paying attention to. Egbuka, and I can't remember who said this. I don't think it was a beat writer. It could have been somebody else. But somebody, and I'm not just spitballing here. This is somebody of reference. I listen to too many podcasts. I read too much stuff, so I can't cite everything readily. But we could be seeing a Justin Jefferson season from Egbuka this year. Now, I don't know if we'll see that. We probably won't. But it's wheels up, man. And the price is getting higher. You want to draft Egbuka by the end of this weekend, he's probably going to be going in the late 5th round as opposed to the early 6th round where he's going right now. So that's the latest on Tampa. Here's one that I haven't, quite frankly, made up my mind about yet. And it's important because this guy could be the number 1 overall running back this year, or he could be a massive bust. And it's Devon Achane. I had no problem taking this guy in the late 1st, early 2nd round. And I have a little pause in clicking that button now. Yesterday morning, Adam Levitan posted this from Establish the Run. Mike McDaniel, the head coach for Miami, said that Achane's absence from practice was preventative. He is not supposed to, or he's expected not to practice. I haven't looked at the practice reports today, but he was not expected to practice the rest of the week. And this is a player that is going to be handled with kid gloves up until the start of the NFL season. Week 1, which is coming up in a couple of weeks against the Colts. McDaniel said, quote, calves are the ones that you have to be super proactive, especially with explosive players. He said, end quote, he said that NFL traders have given him and told him horror stories of players coming back too soon from calf injuries and then either re-aggravating the injury or blowing out their Achilles. Both would be awful. Absolutely awful. Can you imagine Devon Achane? I don't even want to say it. Because that would be horrible for fantasy, be horrible for Achane. Now, Jalen Wright has been less than underwhelming so far, 13 carries for 16 yards or something like that in preseason. It's been terrible. Ollie Gordon has actually looked pretty good, but I think Ollie Gordon is obviously a limited guy when it comes to athleticism and certainly not the prototypical Mike McDaniel back. The other thing that we have to consider here, and you don't have to be a casual football fan to see what's going on in Miami is not great. Like the Tyreek Hill stuff, he could be washed. He could be showing, or he's already is showing signs of decline, and it doesn't sound like him and Tua Tagovailoa are on the same page. Miami, I mean, they could just be a train wreck before October or even early October. And if that's the case, do you really want the running back on that team when he's dealing with a calf? Is the path to winning $1 million going to go through Miami and Devon Achane? This is what we have to talk about, because there was a non-zero chance that he would catch 100 balls this year, depending upon, how what version of the Miami offense we're going to see. What we saw last year when they wanted to keep Tagovailoa upright was an offense that centered on targets to Jonnu Smith and targets to Devon Achane, and they crushed it. So the thing is with Achane, you have to place your bet. Are you still placing your bet in the early second round with Devon Achane? That's where he's going right now. Over the last 2 days in the FFPC Big Gorilla, 205, slipped a little bit, still gone as high as the 112. So some people are still taking him as a first-round pick. He has slipped behind Ashton Genty. He's now behind Derrick Henry as well. And quite frankly, it would not surprise me at all when we look at this Big Gorilla data from Fantasy Mojo on Monday. Would not surprise me at all if Devon Achane goes from running back 7 to running back 10 with Chase Brown, Bucky, Irving, and Jonathan Taylor moving ahead of him. I think you can make a case. There are going to be certain people out there that would rather have the quote-unquote safety of Josh Jacobs rather than the volatility of Devon Achane. Do we have the same concerns about the Packers offense putting up points and moving the ball that we do in Miami? Probably not. Now, I think I'd rather have Achane than Jacobs, but the point remains that it depends the type of fantasy player you are, but Achane is not trending in the right direction now. And I think I will probably let some other people take him rather than me grabbing him going forward. Let's get back to, we've avoided Jacory, Croskey-Merritt for so long. We're an hour into the show. We haven't, I've mentioned him a little bit, but not a ton. Commanders running back Brian Robinson is not expected to play for the Commanders in 2025. This according to one Ian Rappaport. Okay. We already saw on Monday night against the Bengals that it was a mutual decision to hold him out to, maintain what trade value he has. Ian Rappaport said that the Commanders might even take on salary to trade him so he can get a draft pick in return. He's 26 years old. He hit escalators in his contract over the last few years to the point where Washington likes their cheaper options behind him rather than keeping Robinson on his team. He's going to be entering his 4th year in the NFL, and the Commanders are shopping him around. I don't expect the Commanders to trade Brian Robinson. I don't think that happens. I could be wrong. Jerry Jones is capable of anything. Or I don't know. I don't know what he's capable of, quite frankly. But when it comes to Robinson, he could really muck things up in Dallas, Kansas City, New Orleans. We mentioned this earlier. Cleveland, quite frankly. Houston, maybe not. I don't know. But this Jacory Croskey-Merritt, I think this is what people, everybody's and their mother is talking about right now. Croskey-Merritt is a 7th round pick who barely played last year because of some NCAA, not violations, but he and the NCAA had differing views of how eligible he should have been for college football last year. There has been nothing but glowing reports on him all training camp. He has done nothing but impress in every single Washington preseason game, and as a result has moved up in drafts to the 807 in FFPC Big Gorilla drafts. 807 is where Croskey-Merritt has ascended to. That puts him ahead on ADP, ahead of Zach Charbonnet. He's moved ahead of J.K. Dobbins. He is now being drafted higher than Travis Etienne. He has moved ahead of Joe Mixon, Cam Scadaboo, Braylon Allen, Jaden Blue. All these players, Croskey-Merritt is going in front of. I was commissioning an FFPC Big Gorilla draft a couple of nights ago, and Croskey-Merritt went at the 311. Now, granted, the guy who made that pick, it was an auto pick, and he asked me to stop the draft. So I thought, that something went haywire with his internet or something. And finally he said, you know what? My dogs were attacking the mailman. I had to get out there. I was going to take Croskey-Merritt anyway. I just ended up grabbing him a little bit earlier. Let's keep rolling. I said, okay. We kept rolling. So he went up to 311. And you say, Balky, that's crazy. Well, bear in mind, later on that same day, Croskey-Merritt went in the 4th round of a Big Gorilla. And I want to play devil's advocate because I think a lot of people, you're looking at me, you're listening to me, and you're saying, this is crazy. Who would take Croskey-Merritt that high? Allow me to tell you that Austin Eckler is not a young running back. Chris Rodriguez has had multiple times to get this a significant chunk of this Commander's backfield, and he hasn't taken advantage. Croskey-Merritt is the unknown. He's the mystery box, and he steps into a situation that is wide open for opportunity, ripe for opportunity. with a team that was one game away from the Super Bowl last year, and obviously has Super Bowl aspirations this year. An offense led by an MVP candidate, the reigning Rookie of the Year, who looks to be an absolute stud in years to come. It's only been 1 year, but Jaden Daniels has looked the part. Isn't there something to be said if Croskey-Merritt does turn in, not necessarily to the bell cow, but the 1A or even the 1B in this offense? Is he not explosive enough? Is he not talented enough? Is he not athletic enough for at least to intrigue us that, hey, maybe this guy could be the definition of a league winner this year? That's the argument I'm going to make for Croskey-Merritt. It's not an argument I subscribe to, and I certainly understand people when they say that they love him, they want him on their team this year. So I will avoid him. I'd rather have all those guys I mentioned, Dobbins, Etienne, Charbonnet, not Mixon. I think I'd rather have Croskey-Merritt than Mixon. Mixon is just do not draft for me at this point. But I'd rather have all those other guys than Croskey-Merritt at this point. And listen, all the advice that we talk about on this show, all my shows every week, it all comes down to what type of fantasy player you are. Some people love taking big risks because they love hitting those home runs. Some people like swinging for doubles or singles and just cobbling a team together for that. You do need some mixture, and you can't just have all doubles. You can't have all home runs and strikeouts. You got to have a nice balance of high floor and high ceiling players. This guy definitely is a high ceiling player. I think he's not likely to hit that ceiling, but I understand the reasoning on why people think that he might and why he's worth a pick in the mid-8th round. And quite frankly, that could go up as the weekend and drafting season goes on, of which we only have 2 weeks left. I want to go back down to Houston. And this you guys will like this because I actually just drafted this player. I was talked into him. And you guys can be the judge of whether this was the right call or not. Houston Chronicles' Jonathan M. Alexander covers the Texans for the publication, said that Nick Chubb is going to likely work as the lead back for the Texans if Joe Mixon misses any time in 2025. Okay. Here's the thing. When it comes to Nick Chubb, you have a player that is completely washed, in my opinion. I don't see... Now, he looked good in this last preseason game. It was probably against backups. But early reports on Nick Chubb, they were talking about his, the coaches are talking about his wisdom and everything he's been through. That's not what I want to hear when I'm talking about a running back in the NFL. I need young, explosive guys that are going to, get chunk yardage. Chubb at this point in his career, and, you loved what you saw originally. He is not that guy anymore. Alexander said in this report for the Chronicle, the Texans signed Chubb specifically because they feared Joe Mixon was going to miss time with this foot/ankle/ we don't know exactly injury that he suffered this offseason. Now, there's a non-zero chance Mixon misses the whole year. I think we all recognize that. I don't think that's a good chance. I don't think he misses the whole year. But he could be on the PUP list to start the season. I think that's a lot more likely. That probably is likely to happen. And Mixon be out the first 4 weeks, and Chubb would be the RB1 on the Texans for those 4 games. He is 29 years old, 5 carries, 25 yards against the Panthers backups last week. Woody Marks actually had 7 carries for 40 yards in that game. I like Woody Marks a lot better. He's the pass catching back, caught a ton of passes in college. And Chubb would obviously either be the 1A or the complete one, because we have to recognize Dameon Pierce, while not great the last couple of years, the offensive scheme that's been installed, the run blocking scheme that's been installed this year, is the one he thrived in his rookie year. So I think we have to recognize that. So I co-own this KFFSC main event team, and my buddy Jim, who I co-own it with, he talked me into Chubb. He said, I just can't quit him. He was our 4th or 5th running back. So I said, the hell with it. Let's go with it. We'll see what happens. I don't envision this being a great pick for us, but it could work out. Chubb is not, he's been ravaged by injuries. He has he's not a young man anymore. And the offensive line that he is running behind in Houston is significantly worse now that Laramie Tunsil and some other changes that were made on that Texans offensive line is not there anymore, or are not there anymore. You have to understand that these are all one of these things is fine. Like, you can deal with it. But all of them together, we probably should have gone elsewhere other than Chubb, but I'm trying to be a good co-manager, and we ended up going with Chubb there, and we'll see what happens. But going forward, I think you can do a lot better than Nick Chubb in your FFPC drafts. Not that I'm trying to trash Jim. He's won way more than I ever have, so this will probably end up working out. But Nick Chubb is going in the area of Tyler Algier, who I'd rather have right now. I guess I'd rather have him than Najee Harris, who's going right behind him. I'd rather wait and take Will Shipley. I'd rather wait and take Woody Marks. Ray Davis is going just ahead of him, and that's probably going to continue. So I'd rather have Davis. Gurendo's back. I'd rather have Gurendo there as well. And then, Rashad White is interesting. Jerome Ford is interesting. They're coin flips when it comes to Chubb, but these are 13th round picks and in the FFPC. So I think that you look at your options there, and maybe you go elsewhere other than a running back, because there's not a lot of them that I like there as well. Speaking of running backs, let's go back to Los Angeles and talk about the Los Angeles Rams and their backfield, which is a fun one to talk about. The Rams took Blake Corum on day 2 last year. They took Jarquez Hunter on day 3 this year, and there could be more opportunities for Jarquez Hunter, according to Rams offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur. In fact, the quote from him was, "The more opportunities Hunter gets, the better it's going to be." He's 22 years old, 4th round pick this year, talented pass catcher, and the Rams coaching staff, the drumbeat has been constantly praising this guy throughout camp. Not great news for Blake Corum. I don't think this is a threat to Kyren Williams, because, McVay, he's going to use his guy and he's going to run him hard. So I still think that this doesn't affect Kyren Williams at all. But I definitely think if you are looking for the guy behind the guy, who do you take, Corum versus Hunter right now? I think we're getting kind of an answer that many people forecasted when the Rams took Hunter. Blake Corum, running back 64 at the 1507 right now. Jarquez Hunter is going as running back 71 at the 1702. I think that's going to flip at some. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think that's going to flip. And we'll see what happens with that Rams backfield. Honestly, what's probably going to happen is Kyren Williams stays healthy all season again. He puts up efficient enough numbers, and Matthew Stafford stays healthy, and Kyren Williams finishes as like running back 8 or running back 7, and Corum and Hunter rarely get into the game. However, we have to allow for all possibilities when we're talking about high-stakes fantasy football drafts, and there is a possibility here that Kyren Williams were to go down. And maybe it's a timeshare between the two, but my guess is McVay does not want a timeshare, that he is going to roll with one guy or the other. And he's going to let these guys play it out on the field, and whoever steps forward and makes more plays is going to be that guy. And at this point, I believe the guy who's going to make more plays is probably Jarquez Hunter. So there you go. That's my thoughts on the Rams and their running back situation. I'd rather wait 2 more rounds and take Hunter than take Blake Corum in the 15th. And that's if I don't have Kyren Williams. If I have Kyren Williams, I'm not taking either one of these guys. I play in the KFFC main event national contest. Like, I'm trying to beat hundreds, thousands of other players. So for me, unless I'm in a closed 12-team league, I'm not going to try to stack backfields. I'm not going to try to stat stack, as they call it, and make sure I lock up the Rams backfield. It's not worth it for me. I want to increase my variance as much as possible, maybe to my own detriment. But that's how I feel about that Rams situation. The Kansas City Chiefs, we teased this before when we were talking about possible landing spots for the Brian Robinson. Ultimately, if he's going to get cut, where's he going to go? We mentioned Kansas City as a team that Diana Rossini is reporting that they're looking to upgrade their running backs, or at least add a running back. The Athletic has a reporter for the Chiefs, Jesse Newell, covers the Chiefs for that publication. And Jesse Newell believes that Brashard Smith might actually get some first-team action in the preseason finale for the Chiefs this weekend. Newell actually describes Smith as a gadget-type role for Kansas City, which would showcase him both as a runner and as a receiver. And it sounds like that the roster spot, if it comes down to it, between Brashard Smith and Elijah Mitchell, it's probably going to go to Brashard Smith. Elijah Mitchell is not signed for any kind of big money at all. So that's something that we'll be watching going forward. I like Brashard Smith late. We shall see what happens with the Kansas City running back situation. I want to bring on tonight's co-host, ladies and gentlemen. You know him. You love him. You read all of his work at RotoBaller.com. You connect with him on X at FF_Stallion. Please welcome into the program the incomparable Dave Ventresca. Dave, welcome aboard, man.
Appreciate you having me on, Eric. Sorry for the delay. I think we had something go down with my docking station here, but I think we got to figure it out. But
good.
I'm thrilled to finally be here and honored you would have me on and excited to get the co-host for a little bit alongside the man who, in my opinion, hands down, has the best beard in fantasy football industry.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. It's a little unkempt.
No, listen, it's pretty good. When you first reached out, my first thought was, I'm gonna have to shave before I go on here.
Yeah, I listen. There's been plenty of people that have told me that I need to shave before I go on and do these shows. I still haven't yet. At some point, it's going to happen.
Keep rocking it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's another popular opinion. A lot of people wanted. I've had people in FFPC drafts. I think Adam Hahn has said, or he has named some of his teams "Save Balky's beard," and so there's plenty of people that don't want to see it going away. Dave, I'm gonna throw this one to you right away.
Okay.
From the frying pan into the fire. Let's talk about the Indianapolis Colts. Big news this week. Jordan Schultz, I believe, was the first to report it. The Colts have named a starting quarterback, and it is not Anthony Richardson. It's going to be Daniel Jones. Apparently, this competition was very close, and Shane Steichen said not only is Daniel Jones going to be the guy for week one, he's the guy for the season. He wants to give him a long leash. He does not want to, make all these changes, back and forth with your quarterback or with his quarterback all season long. So I think for best ball, we obviously know if you're drafting a Colts quarterback late, it's now Daniel Jones. It's not Anthony Richardson. The question for you is what this does for guys like Michael Pittman, Tyler Warren, Josh Downs. I think initially, I know I was pretty excited that ended up being Jones. I really think that this is best for fantasy because it's going to make those guys a lot more valuable than they would have been if Anthony Richardson was a quarterback.
Yeah, I think for our purposes, for fantasy football, I think it's definitely an improvement compared to the disaster that was Anthony Richardson the last 2 years. I don't really know how it's going to affect Michael Pittman. I think the bigger beneficiaries are going to be both Josh Downs and Tyler Warren. Wan'Dale Robinson was really effective last year, particularly in PPR leagues with Daniel Jones. And I think both Warren and Downs kind of have that underneath skill set that I think is going to fit really well and could really, one of those two I think is really going to become like a cheat code in PPR leagues. I was kind of initially like you when I heard the news with Daniel Jones, and I felt like it was, full wheels up for Josh Downs. Now I'm kind of starting to wonder, just seeing sort of the usage in the preseason and plus Downs' hamstring injury. We don't know, the severity of that yet and if it's going to keep him out. But I'm kind of wondering now if Tyler Warren is actually going to be the guy who really is the one who benefits from that. I still like Downs, but I'm kind of starting to waver my views on that and wondering if Tyler Warren might be actually the way to play this passing game.
He 100% is the way to play this passing game for me. I don't know, man. I probably drafted Tyler Warren in a bunch of leagues. The last time I drafted him was probably like 2 or 3 weeks ago because I feel like I just had too much of him or other people were drafting him higher than I was willing to take him. But I got a bunch of them. And I think going forward here with Warren, this is only – I mean, if you watch that Colts-Packers game last week, he was heavily involved when the Colts starters were out there. So I would imagine that's going to be the case again. He is being drafted right now in FFPC leagues, the Big Gorilla, as tight end 8 at the 702. I don't know if he gets much higher than that, but certainly is possible once, we'll see what he does this weekend if he plays at all. But I think that last memory we have of Tyler Warren, as it stands right now, is a really good one. And those last memories tend to drive up ADP as we get closer and closer to the start of the season, which, as I've said several times tonight, only 2 weeks away. I want to talk about the Saints. I touched on this earlier. I want to get your thoughts. Kellen Moore said Tyler Shook and Spencer Rattler are going to play in the preseason finale. He also said Rattler is going to start that game as well. I remain bullish on Chris Olave. I remain bullish on Rashid Shaheed and Alvin Kamara, Juwan Johnson late in FFPC tight end premium leagues as well. My reasoning is this. Kamara did numbers last year, and the offense was terrible. This year, they get Olave back, hopefully for the whole season. They get Shaheed back, who's coming off a knee injury, who's been getting work in the slot. They're going to have him back, hopefully for the whole season. So I just think that this offense is significantly better and in a lot of spots and the same in others. I don't think it got worse. So why would we expect bad things from the Saints offense when we should have gotten a ton of bad things last year? And we really didn't from the guys who were on the field. I think Kamara, Olave, or Shaheed, Johnson, they're getting underdrafted in the FFPC right now, and I'm definitely bullish on their ADP.
Yeah, I would probably say I'm on the other side of that, and I feel like while the offense may not necessarily be worse, I think we do have a pretty big, in my opinion, downgrade in the offensive coordinator and play caller going from Clint Kubiak to Kellen Moore. I am also not a huge Spencer Rattler or Tyler Shough fan. I would probably say the guy who, if you're going to want to play this passing game and take a shot there, Kamara's not a bad bet. I'm sure he's going to be involved as a receiver as well. Excuse me once again. Chris Olave would probably be the guy that I would take a shot on here, and have been planning to do that in my drafts coming up here. There's a good dip on it. He's going to be the clear number one. Should see a ton of volume. I'm just not entirely certain that Kellen Moore is going to be an improvement for these guys, and I'm not exactly sure what we're going to get from the offense as well. I just feel like this is a team that is going to be really, really bad this year, and is probably going to be in a position where they're looking for a new quarterback in 2026, and that might actually be the time when it's best to get in on this offense with Olave, Shaheed, all those other pieces, once they actually get a legitimate franchise quarterback in there to pair with Moore and can kind of get his vision on offense and all that.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on the Saints next year needing a quarterback because they still don't have one. I don't think Shough is the answer.
No, I agree.
And the thing is with the Saints, you can be bad and still put up fantasy numbers, which is what I think those guys will do this year. But I am with you. I think they're going to be so bad that they're going to be in prime position to have a pick at the top of the draft where they can have any number one of some pretty good quarterbacks in next year's choose them up. Drew Aller. We'll see about Arch Manning.
Garrett Nussmeier, right? His father's the offensive coordinator. Yeah. That link. Yeah.
The NFL is right. The script is writing itself.
Right.
Right. Garrett Nussmeier, you heard it here first. The starting quarterback for the Saints next year. If you agree with Dave and you're fading the Saints, if you agree with me and you're targeting Saints, you can do either one or both. When you join the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament, I don't know why you did both, but you could. $1 million grand prize. $350 entry fee, a $50 discount for every third team that you got that you get. 7 Bananas promo is live. You keep getting that 7 pick randomly assigned to you when the draft order randomizes, when the league fills. You keep getting that 7 pick multiple times in a row. We're going to give you escalating free teams with the FFPC. Sign up now at myffpc.com. If best ball is more your slant, check out the FFPC best ball and superflex best ball tournaments. $125 and $35 to enter, $300,000 and $100,000 grand prizes, respectively. $100,000 runner-up for that best ball tournament this year. Drafts are available 30, 60, 2-hour, and 6-hour clocks. 30-second, 60-second, 2-hour, and 6-hour clocks, although those 6-hour clocks are going to start winding down tomorrow. That's all at myffpc.com. I want to step out and take a quick break. When we come back, Dave Ventresca from RotoBaller is going to give us some of his targets in fantasy football drafts this year. Who will they be? Who does he like in the Jacksonville backfield? Is there a Baltimore pass catcher that he perhaps likes? And let's get his thoughts on the Minnesota offense as well. He's Dave Ventresca from RotoBaller. I'm Eric Balkman. You're watching FFPC Insider Access live here on the Better Sports Network.
What's up, guys? Andrew Cooper here, Fantasy Alarm. And boy, do I have great news for you. It's that time of year. The FFPC main event is open. The flagship contest, in my opinion, the biggest number one contest in all of fantasy football. It's not just about the prizes. You can win $1 million, but if you win a contest like this, you are gold-plated, gold-stamped in this community. That puts respect on your name when you go in there with the big dogs and you win a tournament like this. So get set up with my FFPC now. When you use promo code ALARM, they'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more if you've never drafted there before. And you can get in there with the big dogs. If you really want, you can actually go to Vegas and draft at the Paris Casino live in these contests. You don't have to do that, though. You can draft online. They have 6-hour, 2-hour, and 60-second clocks, depending on what you're feeling. You're going to want to draft early and often these to give yourself the best possible shot at winning. And let me tell you, when you go over to your social media bio and you throw FFPC main event champion in there, people start thinking about you at a different way. You are now an absolute champion and legend in this community if you win the FFPC main event. Open now over at myffpc.com.
Event draft
we're drafting
season.
A main event team on FFPC, $2,000 entry team, grand prize of $1 million.
I'm looking for that $1 million top prize.
Main event season is in full swing.
It is time for the FFPC main event, our flagship competition over at myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Check that out. A $6 million prize pool just ready and willing to have you jump into it. A $1 million grand prize. Sign up today. We got, 2 more live main events going on tonight that are still need some fillers. I do believe, I'm going to bring it up right now just so I'm not talking out of my rear end. I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys good information on this show, not about fantasy, not necessarily just about fantasy players, but about the drafts at the FFPC. Yeah, we do have the 11:30 Eastern main event live draft already half full, so I'm sure that's going to fill. Make sure you're popping in as soon as you can on that and draft for $1 million tonight. What a way to spend a Thursday evening. Dave Ventresca joining me from RotoBaller.com. You follow him on the X at FF_Stallion. You have really taken the FF Stallion moniker to a new level. How did you come up with this, Dave?
I don't know, man. It really just started my home league since I was, like 12 years old. My team's always been just Italian Stallions. And when I decided to get into this crazy industry we've all decided to join, it just felt like a natural
Carried it over.
Fit.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Well, I love it. It's definitely been working out for you for sure. You can check out, as a reminder, Dave's work at rotoballer.com as well. In fact, this is where I found out some of the players that you like and maybe not like so much this year. I think these. Well, I'll just ask you about these guys, and you let me know how you're feeling about them. We talked about Tampa earlier in the show, and I was just talking about how much praise I had for Emeka Egbuka. But what about the backfield? Tristan Wirfs, we found out, he's not going to be on the PUP. He's not going to open up on IR. He is going to be available at the start of the season. Maybe not the first few games, but hopefully by week 4, week 5. What does that do for a guy like Bucky Irving, a player who is ready to move ahead of Devon Achane in ADP, as he's very close right now? He is at the 208. Achane is now at the 205, so it's definitely closing in. Bucky Irving, running back 9. Is this guy a target for you at the 208 in FFPC drafts right now, Dave?
Absolutely is. And I think, first off, supremely talented player. And what I thought was most impressive about what he did last year, finishing his PPR the overall PPR RB 13, he did so despite not being a full-time player last year. Like, he only played 60% of the offensive snaps in just 2 games last year. I fully expect that to change this year. Todd Bowles had no problem making Rachaad White the full-blown bell cow back 2 years ago. Now that he's got a year under his belt, I fully expect Bucky Irving to completely take over that role. It's a good thing Tristan Wirfs doesn't look like it's going to be an extended absence to begin the year, because the Buccaneers rushing game actually has, according to Sharp Football, they have the third easiest projected rushing schedule this year. And you throw a healthy Tristan Wirfs in, I think that's going to be a great thing for Bucky. Irving could easily finish as an RB1. Now, we might see a dip in efficiency this year, maybe in those first couple games with Wirfs is out, but also with no Liam Cohen in the mix. But I believe that we'll see an increase in volume, and that should be able to offset like any dip in efficiency we might get. And he's also still going to be involved in the passing game. I know you still have Rashad White there, but he's still dealing with the hamstring injury. I mean, who knows? Sean Tucker might end up passing him on the depth chart. Tucker doesn't really profile as a receiving back. So I fully expect Bucky Irving to lock down that passing downs role as well. Great target as an RB1 if you go wide receiver in round 1, or even as your RB2 if you decide to go with an RB start.
Bucky Irving is a guy I hadn't really been drafting. I picked him in a best ball draft a couple of weeks ago, and it felt good as my lead.
I bet it did, man.
It's just like the way that the team came together around him. I felt really good about him being my lead running back. The lead running back in Seattle is Kenneth Walker, a player I was on earlier, and now I'm starting to have.
You're fading. You going to sip some Chardonnay?
Yeah, the Chardonnay tastes good. And part of the reason why is Brady Henderson, who covers the Seahawks for ESPN, has reported that Charbonnet is going to have a significant role in the backfield this season. He's been looking really good. Clint Kubiak has been gushing about him, who's the new OC there. Kenneth Walker has missed significant time with a foot issue. And listen, Kenneth Walker is no stranger to the trainer's room. Charbonnet has not missed any time and rushed for 45 yards on 5 carries against the Chiefs last week. Walker, the best ability in the NFL is availability, and he's having issues with that right now. Here's the thing, and I'll couch it like this. You tell me what you think. But when you compare the ADPs for these players, I have had a significant shift in how I feel about the Seattle Seahawks backfield. Right now, Kenneth Walker is running back 16. You have to draft him at the 309 to get him. Zach Charbonnet, running back 32, 807. So he is going 5 rounds. And sometimes I think with the guy going earlier, maybe he's still going to be the guy who puts up more numbers. But is the juice worth the squeeze in the 3rd round for Kenneth Walker for you right now, Dave?
I still think it is, because I still feel like if he hits the ground running, if he's healthy, and that's the big if, that's the gamble with Ken Walker. That's the play, that he's going to be healthy. And I still believe like he is a superior back than Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet is a really good player. I loved him at UCLA. I have a decent amount of him in Dynasty. I was crushed when he landed in Seattle. But I don't think he has the same upside that Ken Walker does with the home run hitting ability, the big plays. Like, that is the type of stuff that if we get him in an ideal scenario, like the Clint Kubiak scheme, like behind an improved offensive line with, them drafting Gray Zabel in round 1 of the draft this past year, if everything aligns, like this is a guy that we could be drafting in round 1 of FFPC drafts next year. And that's often the key. That's what you're trying to find when you're trying to win $1 million, right? These are the plays you want to make. I think, at this point, I did read that report last night, and my takeaway from that was I thought Mike McDonald's quote stood out when he said at some point, we've been limited in Ken Walker, we were playing for him, but at some point he's got to be here and he's got to get on the field. Now, he has practiced 3 straight days, which I think is a good thing. He's gotten in the joint practice with the Green Bay Packers. I kind of read, my takeaway from that story was more of a a direct, I guess he was directly speaking to the Ken Walker as sort of like, hey, we love you. We want to make you our guy, but we also have this other running back behind you who's pretty good, who, if you can't find a way to get on the field, we've got this guy ready to take the reins. So that was kind of my read on that. And, if it's a split, then I think to your point, then I think Charbonnet, there's really no debate at that point. And Charbonnet is going to be the way you want to play this. I just, they have McDonald's been on, been quoted saying that they have intentionally been limiting Walker's reps, to keep him fresh for the regular season. And so at this point, I'm still willing to play that. And, at the 309, if we're just talking traditional redraft leagues too, like that's not going to kill your team if you whiff on that. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like you got Christian McCaffrey going in the 108, 109, where that's literally either, you win your league or you strike out and you're done. Ken Walker at the 309, like, yeah, all right, you missed on the 3rd round pick. It's going to sting, but it's not going to end your season. So I still think there's upside there, even, with that report coming out last night.
I have to bring up J.K. Dobbins here, and this is an interesting story. So Harvey in the first preseason game, 7 carries, 25 yards. They beat the Niners 30-10. He also got a catch for 4 yards. He was listed on the first preseason depth chart for the Broncos by Sean Payton as running back 5 was Harvey. Harvey opened with the starters, got every rush attempt while he was with the first team. Then we later found out on Twitter, and I think it was Ben Albright had posted this on X, that the plan was to start Dobbins, but he couldn't find his helmet. And as a result, Harvey was the guy in there. He pulled a Chris Comer from Friday Night Lights, right? He couldn't find his helmet. So then Boobie Miles goes in. Thank God it didn't end up the same way for RJ Harvey. But the thing is with Dobbins, and I'm going to do this the same way we're talking about the Seahawks running backs, and I'll give you the ADPs for both these players right now. RJ Harvey, running back 20 at the 502. J.K. Dobbins, running back 33 at the 812. That's almost 4 rounds difference here. Which one of these Broncos running backs do you prefer, Dave? And tell me why it's J.K. Dobbins.
Well, I like them both.
Okay.
Like I want to get shares of both. I think the thing that I just want to touch on first, I know Harvey's getting a lot of love, but the thing I just would say, he's not going to be a bell cow back in this offense. Neither is J.K. Dobbins, right? That's just not what Sean Payton does. You go back through his entire history with the Saints, even with Denver, like there's always multiple guys. Mm-hmm. So there's always multiple ways to play this backfield. I think RJ Harvey probably in an ideal world, if he can have an Alvin Kamara like 2017 rookie season and, average over 6 yards a carry, be heavily involved as a receiver. Could he finish as a top 5 back? Sure. I would probably put that in like the 1% like range of outcomes at the ceiling. Dobbins is just, I've always been a big J.K. Dobbins fan. I had a lot of him in Dynasty. He was crushed when he tore his Achilles a couple years ago, and then suddenly he came back to life last year. I feel like he's probably going to be the receiving back in this offense. Like he's the better pass protector, so he's going to get a ton of targets in this offense. He's running behind one of the best offensive lines in the league. I just feel like both of these guys are going to be similar-ish production if Harvey hits the ground running, and we do see like a massive rush, big time spike in efficiency from him, then he's going to be the preferred play. But I don't think Dobbins is a bad way to play it either. I think he's going to have the edge on passing downs, at least to start the year. And, maybe he's going to be the better goal line back too. I was reading something on that because I don't remember who had posted this, so I'm going to get that wrong. But Sean Payton and their offensive coordinator, Joe Lombardi, were both quoted as saying he still has a tendency to bounce runs too much to the outside. And it's not taken, which, that was something that kept Reggie Bush off the field all those years in Sean Payton's offense too. So, that's going to be something that could potentially come back and bite him as well. And, I like both. I don't know. I'd say I have a preference. I want to make sure I get exposure to both across my leagues. But yeah, I'm fully on board to get Dobbins.
Lombardi, I remember that quote he was talking about. It's like, he still has a tendency to bounce it outside, but he still usually beats the guy to the corner.
Yeah, right.
Which is awesome. Yeah. That's what you like to hear. Jacksonville backfield. Do you have a preference here? I think we could throw LaQuint Allen out unless you're drafting a 28 round best ball team. But
definitely not LaQuint Allen.
Okay, but when it's Bigsby, Etienne, and Bashal Tutin, I don't know. I feel like there's value in all three of these guys. Are you leaning one way or the other?
I think the way I'm leaning is really just anything but Travis Etienne, and that is mainly because he's the most expensive one of the three. Which, when you get one of these scenarios, you don't know who it's going to be. I think the better play, I think most people would agree, is just go get the guys who are cheaper. I've definitely taken some shots on Bigsby. I'm taking some shots on Tutin as well. We'll talk about Bigsby right now. Etienne's big problem the last 2 years, really since his first year, he hasn't been a very good rusher. He's been extremely inefficient, even during that RB3 finish 2 years ago. Still averaged under 4 yards a carry, and Bigsby was actually Jacksonville's best back last year, and he finished higher than Etienne in a ton of metrics. Like I have it right here on my notes. Bigsby finished higher than Etienne in next gen stats rush yards over expected, PFF rushing grade, PFF elusive rating, yards after contact per attempt, and fantasy points data suite's explosive run rate. So if we're just talking between Etienne and Bigsby is a better play. Now, the thing we don't know, though, we're all trying to draw parallels between what Liam Cohen did in Tampa Bay and what he's going to do here. Truthfully, we really have no idea. Tank Bigsby could be, Bucky Irving. Etienne could be Rashad White. Bashal Tutin could be Sean Tucker. But there's also a scenario where, any one of these three guys just takes the job and runs with it. I am making sure I get some Bashal Tutin. I loved him at Virginia Tech. I think, home running threat. He does a lot of fun things. I don't really, even though I said I'm out on Etienne, I'm not going to fight anybody who says that's the way to play this backfield. They're all so cheap, but I think when you go into your drafts, man, you got to make sure you get a piece of this backfield, because we saw what Cohen can do in Tampa Bay, and figuring out this backfield could be the key to winning your league, or even winning $1 million in the FFPC.
The thing that is important to realize here, it's like 2 rounds. Etienne is going 2 rounds ahead of both Bigsby and Bashal Tutin right now. So to your point, when in doubt, grab the cheaper guy. Watching us tonight on Twitch, Potato Juice 0001. Would you trade CeeDee Lamb and David Montgomery for Bijan Robinson and Courtland Sutton? Now, obviously, this question requires nuance. It kind of, depends upon what your team settings are, what type of league this is, whether you need a running back. But if I'm answering this in a vacuum, Dave, I would rather have the Bijan Robinson, Courtland Sutton side than the CeeDee Lamb, David Montgomery side.
Yeah, I mean, you get a young running back entering his prime. Like, I think Robinson's probably going to end up finishing as the RB1 this year. Atlanta has another easy rush schedule. I love that. You can get probably 5-6 good years of Bijan and, pick up an okay wide receiver too if it's in PPR leagues. Yeah, I would take that side as well.
The next team or player I want to talk about is Trey Benson. I drafted him in a bunch of dynasty leagues last year, did not see much return on my investment, but will that be different this year, Dave? Is Trey Benson a target for you on the Arizona Cardinals in 2025?
I think he is. I think he's a great bench stash kind of running back. And look, let's not pull punches here. Benson stunk last year. Right. I thought he looked hesitant and indecisive as a rusher, but the thing that I think we all kind of forget sometimes when we're playing fantasy football, it's, what I think about a player doesn't matter. What you think doesn't matter. What does matter is what the team and what the coaching staff thinks. And through Arizona's own actions this year or inaction, it shows that they still have a lot of faith in Trey Benson, in what was supposedly a loaded running back class this year, right? Arizona had the chance to say, you know what, Trey Benson wasted that 3rd-round pick last year. Let's find someone else from this draft class. Well, they didn't add anybody of note. Mm-hmm. And so in which the only other running back, I believe, behind him is Michael Carter. And so, that does speak volumes to their confidence and their feelings on Benson. There's been some mixed messages out on X, like the Coach Speak Index, that we have quotes from Jonathan Gannon, the head coach, and Drew Petzing, the offensive coordinator, kind of indicating that James Conner is still going to be the bell cow. But we also have quotes from Conner himself and Kyler Murray saying, yeah, Trey Benson's going to be more involved. Probably my stance on benching this year is probably more of a fade of James Conner than it is like a ringing endorsement of Benson. Conner, he's been one of the most undervalued players the last 2 years, but he's now 30 years old. And, this is that point for running backs where production can unexpectedly fall off a cliff like any time. Like Melvin Gordon a couple years ago with the Broncos, he was still splitting with Javonte Williams. And I forget the season, but he was great. And then he goes into year 2 and he just completely nosedives and he wasn't the same player. So I think there's a possibility Benson could have some standalone value. And if Conner starts to decline or he gets injured, which he's had some struggles with injuries as well, you could have a plug and play like borderline RB1.
Trey Benson is a guy I'm looking forward to bigger things this year and hopefully bigger things for my dynasty teams that I have him on. If you want to play dynasty in the FFPC, pick one up today. Dynasty startups going on right now. Entry fees ranging from $100 all the way up to $5,000. 2,000 plus leagues over the course of 15 years and no leagues have ever folded. That's at myffpc.com. Myffpc.com is where to go for that. We'll step out, take our final break. When we come back, we're going to put one Dave Ventresca from RotoBaller on the clock. Would he rather draft Jakobi Meyers or Chris Olave? Would he rather draft Baker Mayfield or Bo Nix, David Njoku or Tyler Warren? These questions and more will be answered. You are watching FFPC Insider Access right here on the Better Sports Network.
This is the main
event draft
We're drafting
season.
a main event team on FFPC, $2,000 entry team. Grand prize of $1 million.
I'm looking for that $1 million top prize.
Main event season is in full swing.
FFPC main event, FFPC Big Gorilla, FFPC Dynasty Leagues, Best Ball and Superflex Best Ball tournaments live now at myffpc.com. About 12 minutes left in the show. Good time to put Dave Ventresca from RotoBaller.com on the clock. You follow him on the X at FF_Stallion. Let's kick things off with one of the teams in action tonight. Actually, I take that back. No, DJ Moore is no longer a Panther. DK Metcalf is a Steeler, but the Steelers and Panthers playing right now. It's time to go. I don't know. It was all of a sudden it was 2022 to me all over again.
It's all right. It all blends together.
It does after a while. Yeah. Now, if you are in a redraft league, who would you rather draft this year, Dave? Is it DK Metcalf or would you rather draft DJ Moore in Chicago?
So I would rather go DK Metcalf, and that might be surprising for some people. Well, first of all, we know Metcalf's going to be the number one target, hands down there. There's really no competition. Arthur Smith's offense, the run ratio, run pad, not great, but how much of that's going to be Arthur Smith and how much of it's going to be Aaron Rodgers? Aaron Rodgers, even though he declined last year, Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson, they were still very playable for fantasy leagues. So he's still, he has that tendency to lock on to one guy in his offenses that he always has, and Pittsburgh doesn't really have anybody else. DJ Moore could totally end up being the number one target in Chicago this year. I just don't think we really know, what that offense is going to look like yet. Plus, there's a ton of target competition. Romo Dunse's been standing out. He could emerge as the one. They drafted Colston Loveland, 10th overall. They also have Luther Burden III, and Greg Olsen last week. I don't know if you caught that on the Bears broadcast. They had Ryan Poles in the booth for a little bit. Poles stepped out, and Greg Olsen kind of let the cat out of the bag when he said Poles thinks that Burden can end up being better than Moreno Dunze by season's end. So there's just a lot of uncertainty for me with the Bears. I think the Bears offense is going to be better. I just don't quite know that Moore is going to be the beneficiary. So, I'll take the guy who may be lesser offense, but we could see 160 targets if everything goes right.
If I shift the question to New Orleans versus Las Vegas, would you rather draft? And by the way, all these players that I'm talking about are all basically going back to back in FFPC drafts right now. If you're on the clock and you're taking a receiver, Dave, are you going to take Jakobi Meyers or are you going to take Chris Olave? I know you talked a little bit about Olave earlier.
So I know I kind of trashed New Orleans offense, but in this scenario, I'd rather take the stab at Olave. I like Jakobi Meyers, super underrated player. He is Las Vegas's wide receiver 1, but he's not going to be their top target, right? That's going to be Brock Bowers.
Does he see more targets than Ashton Genty this year, Meyers?
I think there's a world where he doesn't. And I think Genty could wind up being the second leading receiver. Second target earner there. That's an interesting one.
Jakobi Meyers could be the rare WR1, but PC3
right
on that team.
right. Yeah. But Olave, it could be nasty. But you said earlier they're going to stink. But there's still potential for a ton of targets, and like we had the Jacksonville Jaguars. Oh my gosh, almost 10 years ago now. The famous Blake Bortles here. Plenty of garbage time points. The
other thing I always bring it back to is fantasy football is supposed to be fun. Chris Olave to me is a lot more fun to draft than Jakobi Myers.
Oh God, yeah.
So that's the other reason I would agree with you and say Olave there. I want to skip to quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield or Bo Nix. Quite frankly, I've gone back and forth on this one. I don't have a video there.
See, it's Bo Nix for me, and it's not really close. I just feel like Baker Mayfield, way better quarterback than a lot of people, including myself, gave him credit for. Like, you don't throw 41 touchdowns by accident and have a 7.2%. That just you're a good quarterback if that happens.
Right.
Problem is, Mayfield's probably the single biggest regression candidate out there this year. Like, set career highs across the board, career highs, passing yards, touchdowns, touchdown rate. He even set a career high in rushing yards. Like, he is going to regress to his career means in all of these areas. And even if he drops, that touchdown rate comes back closer to his career mark of 5%, like that's going to make a significant dent. Nix, it's an interesting one because I do think there's a world where we actually saw Bo Nix peak last year, but I feel like he's going to be safer in that, he's still going to run a lot. He's got, in my opinion right now, the better offensive play caller. We don't know what Josh Grizzard is going to be, just because he was in the same system. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better. We saw that a couple years ago with the Eagles when Shane Steichen got hired by the Colts, and I think it was Brian Johnson took over and the offense was a mess. So, plus, there is a scenario where Bo Nix takes a significant year or two leap in the system and, makes a major statistical improvement there. He just kind of feels like the safer pick for me.
I think, and we're running out of time here, but I want to get to a really fun one. And this is a first round one. If you are dead set on taking one of these running backs in the first round, or maybe the better question to ask you, Dave, let's say one of your buddies is drafting and he says, you're going to co-own this team with me, but we have to take either Saquon Barkley or Christian McCaffrey in the first round. What's the advice you're giving him? Which one is it going to be, Barkley or McCaffrey?
It's going to be McCaffrey, and I don't even hesitate to say that. And the main thing is, like, Barkley, all-world rushing season last year. You go look at the stats from any 2,000-yard rusher. Their rushing production all significantly declines the following year. For Barkley, what's his role going to be as a receiver? He wasn't heavily involved as a pass catcher last year. McCaffrey, he's locked in for that role. Even if his rushing totals go down, like he's going to be maybe their second target earner. Like, San Francisco wide receivers are dropping left and right. It's looking like it's going to be Kittle, Pearsall, and McCaffrey for sure. And, that work as a receiver is what, for me, makes that a pretty easy call. Plus, if he still is getting the work as a rusher, we know what he's capable of. He can put up one of those all-world seasons.
Yeah, Joe King already chiming in on YouTube. CMC is the last man standing already in that San Francisco. Although Garendo did come back now, so we do have Garendo.
Yeah, sure.
which is good. Let's talk about another running back situation. These guys are going back to back right now, and both of them have been steamed up the board a little bit. Jordan Mason now in Minnesota, or Jaylen Warren in Pittsburgh.
I'm going Mason, and Kevin O'Connell's been gushing about this guy since they acquired him in the offseason. It's going to be a better offense. I feel like better offensive line. He might even be the goal line back. Aaron Jones, I know they gave him an extension this offseason, but all the metrics for him, they point to a player in decline. So there is a scenario where Jordan Mason completely takes over this backfield by midseason. Jaylen Warren, look, nice player. I think he's going to be another great option in PPR leagues as a flex, maybe an RB2. My thing with Jaylen Warren, though, he sat behind Najee Harris for 3 years, and that could never beat him out. We all know what Najee Harris is at this point. For whatever reason, and look, Jaylen Warren's clearly looked like the superior rusher. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, that coaching staff didn't seem to think he was good enough, better enough than Najee Harris to give him the RB1 role. Now they brought him back this year as a restricted agent, as a restricted free agent, and they signed him to a restricted free agent tender for $5.3 million. It's not exactly a ringing endorsement, and so I know Caleb Johnson is having some issues in pass protection, everything. I'm a big Caleb Johnson fan. I'm not as concerned about the lack of athleticism as others, and so. The thing I just get caught up on with Warren, I'm just not quite sure why we think he is going to suddenly take over this backfield when he couldn't beat out Najee Harris for 3 years.
No, it's a good point. It's good thinking there in regards to Jaylen Warren. I think as much as I've drafted Jaylen Warren, I think I might be with you on Mason here. Final one for the night. We'll go back to the wide receiver room. DeMario Douglas in New England or Joshua Palmer in Buffalo. This is another fun one, an underrated one, and quite frankly, not a lot of chatter going on between.
No, I loved it
versus Palmer.
Yeah, because I have shares of both players across my dynasty leagues, but it's Pop Douglas, and the big thing is I think Douglas. We don't know what's going to happen in New England as far as who's going to be the wide receiver one. Douglas is drawing rave reviews. The thing with Palmer, I think he's a good player, but I think he could just be more of a rotational player. I expect, Joe Brady's still the play caller, and I just still expect them to kind of go with that spread the ball around approach. I don't know that we're ever going to see it, someone truly emerge as the wide receiver one there. I still think Palmer could be a great deep league flex, or in some of these dynasty leagues where, it's a start 12, a start 13, things like that. Palmer could be a great flex play. But if you're forcing me to choose one, it's got to be Douglas, just because I think he's the guy that has the best chance to emerge as his team's wide receiver one.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm down on Shakir because of that high ankle sprain. So again, I have shares of both of these players like you. I think it's Joshua Palmer for me is the way I would lead. But
okay.
You know what, Dave? You ask me tomorrow, I might switch my mind to DeMario. That's how
right.
Between these guys.
Yeah.
Always fun to put the guests on the clock tonight. And Dave, with that, we're going to wrap up the show. I want to remind everybody that we can find you on X at @FF_Stallion. You're doing a lot of stuff for RotoBaller though right now too.
Yeah. I contribute kind of a little bit of everything. I'll have some fantasy football stuff coming out. I contribute on the sports betting side of things. You can find me in the RotoBaller Discord there. I kind of lurk around there, release my weekly best bets and some player props that I'm on that week. You can also catch my work on rotoballer.com, as you said, and check out the RotoBaller app. We have live news updates, rankings, breakout sleepers, busts, DFS plays, betting picks. We've got it all going on over there.
It is your companion for fantasy football drafting season, that RotoBaller app, rotoballer.com. And of course, make sure you're following Dave on X at @FF_Stallion. This was fun, man. I'm going to have you back on again.
We'll do it after I throw my whole docking station and trash. And
happens to the best of us, man.
Yeah.
Don't you worry. Don't you worry. I want to thank Dave for coming on tonight, Dave Ventresca, and of course our producer Sean Engel, a fellow RotoBaller. We were just RotoBalling all over the place tonight with Dave and Sean. We will be back this coming Thursday with the season 4 premiere of FFPC Insider Access with Tyler Bucher from Fantasy Guru. We'll talk with him. It's going to be a lot of fun. FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament, main event, Superflex Best Ball Tournament, Classic Best Ball Tournament, and of course, Dynasty Startups all going on at myffpc.com. For our producer, Sean Engel and Dave Ventresca, I have been Eric Balkman. This is FFPC Insider Access on the Better Sports Network. Go out and crush those drafts, everybody.